It happens to all of us. Hello, everyone. This is Samwise J. Morgenstern, also known as Janusz Jalic, and you are watching the Mongols Podcast. I'm here with one of my co-hosts, Jay Burke, and of course, we proudly introduce ourselves to the lovely Jackmeister.
Hello.
And of course, we're going to be continuing where we left off on our last episode, talking about the secret history of Juveni by starting off with what the heck Juveni is doing. Or rather, was doing, considering that he's been dead for 800 years.
Spoilers. Only according to you.
Oh my. Only according to me. So if I'm the only source confirming this claim, what am I going to be, Alex Jones?
Actually, no, Rashid Alvin does mention his death.
Point taken.
Something like that, I believe. Something to that effect.
Alright.
He gets some bad news and then dies. But his brother had already been murdered, so...
Yeah! He's just... I guess, to put in prequel meme talk, he's dying of being sad.
Oh, yes, a broken heart. He lost the will to live. That's totally how people die. That's good. Well, in their defense, it was like a planet of little alien midgets, so I don't think they knew much about human biology. So I thought it was robots. Were they? You could be right. No, I haven't seen that movie in a decade.
Anyways, back to this galaxy. So, as far as I know, for Juveni, he worked for Kara Hulegu, who was the ruler and first Han of the Ilkhanate, which is technically supposed to say yes to Monka Han, but considering that you've got an entire Khanate between the two, that's kind of a hard thing to ask. And most of Juveni's work comes during the 1250s, and he actually has connections to the destruction of the Hassani Saba. The Hassani Saba are actually, as far as I know, the inspiration behind the word assassin, because they were basically like the first ones to actually like make it into a regular business.
Oh yeah, those guys, I remember them.
Yes, Assassin's Creed loves talking about them, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think in one of the games, you actually play like when the Mongols attack Alamut.
Ah, yes.
And I didn't play it myself, but I saw videos on YouTube, and you play as old version of the guy from the first game. And he has the apple, and he just like squeezes it, and it just sends out a shockwave which kills a bunch of guys who don't even really look like Mongols. It's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah. But at least they got the idea around the idea that the Sani Saba are always a one-way trip. You get in, you kill the guy you're hired to kill, and then you probably die. You don't come back very often.
No, but they were Ismailis. So sort of a sect of Shi'ism. And so Juveni, he's, when Hulagu destroys, what happens, what's the fortress, or, is that Alamut?
Yeah.
Alamut. When Hulagu takes Alamut, Juveni is celebrating Hulagu as a warrior of Islam. And I believe he actually calls him oh, good heavens, what's the word for holy warrior?
Mahdi? Ghazi, yeah, that makes sense, right. Osman had the same title when he started fighting the Ottomans.
Mm-hmm. So, there's Juveni, the history of the world conqueror, celebrating the grandson of Chinggis Khan as a holy warrior for Islam.
Wait.
Sort of, instruments of God's will.
Wait, did Hulagu ever convert to Islam?
No.
That's hilarious! That's hilarious. So a Ghazi can be not Islam if it's Hulegu.
I don't remember exactly who calls him a Ghazi, but it's that kind of language, and that he's not a Muslim, but he's an instrument of God's will.
Oh, so sort of like Cyrus the Great in the Bible.
Yeah, that kind of. If anything, so Hulagu's chief wife, Doku's Hatun, I believe she was a Christian. And Hulagu may have had Christian leanings.
Oh, yeah!
Or sort of Buddhist kind of. But when he died, he was also had human sacrifices at his funeral. So it's kind of tough to take down exactly what his beliefs were. Wait. Are we? Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I've sort of been lost. Are we talking about the Viking king of Normandy?
No, Kara Hulegu. That's the grandson of Genghis Khan. He's Kublai's brother.
Oh. I got really confused. I thought we were talking about the Viking king of Normandy, who is the grand descendant of the Queen. Rollo? And I got... Yes, Rollo, thank you. Sorry. I got really confused there for a second.
Indeed.
Yeah. No, not quite.
So, anyway, as far as I know, Giovanni in the History of the World Conqueror basically covers basically the situation that happens before Chinggis comes into town, all the way to the destruction of Alamut itself with its last imam, Rukn ad-Din.
Mm-hmm. Giovanni stops writing basically just before the Mongols get to Baghdad, which you will notice we've just been discussing how he's presenting Hulagu as this instrument of Islam, and then stops the narrative just before what's considered the end of the Islamic Golden Age and Hulagu's terrible destruction of Baghdad in 1258.
Yeah.
And just a horrendous atrocity. And Giovanni, perhaps conveniently, stops writing. It doesn't see fit. Which is also interesting because he goes on to become the governor of Baghdad.
Right, after its sacking.
Yeah. So,
I think it's kind of, he's doing whatever is necessary to keep his head.
Yeah. Well, they sometimes say, oh, Giovanni, he just didn't have time to finish History of the World Conqueror there. I kind of think it's because he never finishes the History of the World Conqueror. There's sections where it seems like he was going to come back and edit stuff, or like he left a blank that come back and fill it in later.
My goodness.
I think kind of his sort of his personal view on sort of his celebration of the Mongols. Well, not a celebration, but kind of a justification for their rule.
Right.
He kind of loses the interest in finishing the work, doing more on it after he sees this horrific loss of life at Baghdad and terrible destruction.
Yeah, makes sense. He doesn't exactly cover the Mongols as opponents very kindly.
Well, some of so I've read his description of the fall of Khorazm very thoroughly. And he just thinks Shah Muhammad is the dumbest guy going. This is entirely his fault. He brought this on. If he had just, had his stuff together. However, his son, Jalal al-Din Burnu, Giovanni thinks he's the best thing.
Yeah.
Since sliced bread, if you want to use. Terrible anachronism, actually. There are a couple centuries before sliced bread. The dark time indeed. And he's describing. I did actually a video on this on Jimur Malik. He's the governor of Khojand, a really really minor guy. But Giovanni gives him an entire chapter describing his resistance against the Mongols and his heroic feats and this and that. And so Giovanni loves these stories of the guys who resisting the Mongols, but he's working for the Mongols, so he can't be too overt over it. And like, it's pretty clear he thinks the destruction is bad, but he in his work going, oh, but we're in a more civilized time of conquest here. This is
oh, sure. Just casually ignore that sacking of Baghdad. Just burn down the hospital. Just casually forget about the fact that you burned down the hospital and literally locked the last caliph in his treasury without any food, or trampled on him with all your horses. Just casually ignore that, sure.
So the Mongols they're God's punishments, but we're sort of for the transgression of the Muslims, but we're past that initial one, and now it's just spreading their rule over the world.
It's kind of...
So, of course, this is kind of, to him, this must have been sort of a great shock, sort of a mental whiplash, going from, here is his presentation of the Mongols or as Hulagu as the more kinder conquests, and then he annihilates Baghdad, does all this awful stuff, and just, Giovanni doesn't, I don't think he could cover it.
He just reached a certain point, and that was it.
I think that's exactly it. It's I'm trying to get it up on my phone here so I can see where he exactly ends off, but it's not loading. But anyways, yeah, that's Hulagu let him down, you might say.
It kind of makes the whole book sound like a lighthearted recording of Attila the Hun, because Attila the Hun is obviously known famously as a scourge of God.
Well, that's sort of famous quote from Chinggis about, "O peoples, had you not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." That's from Giovanni's work, and there's not. The jury's kind of out on whether that's something Chinggis actually said. A lot of people think that's Giovanni putting the words in his mouth, and that's really summarizes his views on the Mongols. This is the punishment of the god, punishment for the sins of the leaders of the Khwarezmian Empire, specifically Shah Muhammad. So, yes.
But I think the real interesting thing there, especially in that sort of quote, is that it sounds like something Chinggis would say.
It's definitely, like, the one view I've also taken on it is Chinggis was always very big on propaganda and justification of both his rule and his attacks. So his rule in Mongolia, that's justified based off his connection to the Hamid Mongol Khans.
Right. There's that.
His attack on the Jin dynasty is justified based on their interference in Mongolia, their execution of Khan Ambakhai, likewise his invasion of Khwarezm. Chinggis, he seems to have put in quite a lot of effort to not invade Khwarezm. He was sending off envoys, diplomats, trying to talk the Khwarezm Shah into sort of apologizing for the massacre at Otrar, but ultimately he does invade. Specifically, the excuse is for the Otrar massacre. So that's the justification for the nomads, for the Mongols. But when you're in Khwarezm, you need to have the justification there to undermine the rule of the Khwarezm Shahs. And he's been in touch with Muslims for years now already.
Right.
He understands, you could play to this sort of sense of Islamic fatalism, you might say, where you give up everything to God's will. Something bad happens, that's the will of Allah.
Makes sense.
We play into this. We already know that he's playing around with propaganda in Khwarezm because they send off fake letters claiming to be from work with the Khwarezm Shah's mother, Terkan Khatun, So they're sowing this distrust and intrigue. You're spreading all these rumors of towers of skulls and all these things. So, possibly the eye of the punishment of God, that's a part of all of this. You're saying, hey, don't fight me. I've literally been sent here as by God upon you. Whether that was actually successful, it's a different matter. A lot of people still resisted, but...
Yep. And while he was also being official historian and governor of Baghdad, Juvaini has another job. Apparently, that's being Sahib Divan, which is finance minister. And as far as I know, this is a family position that has been held historically by members of his family, and he holds this until his death in about 1284.
It's kind of hard to hold these sorts of titles after you're dead.
True enough, true enough.
Actually, posthumous titles are a rather popular thing among the Mongols in China.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think Genghis got a title from Kublai during the establishment of the Yuan dynasty.
Yeah, he'd be Yuan Taizu, great progenitor of the Yuan dynasty.
Right, right.
Like, there's all these other chief figures. Yellow Chutsai gets a posthumous title. Chu Chuji, the Taoist monk, he gets a posthumous title. So Oprah, you get a posthumous title. You get a posthumous title. You get a posthumous title.
My goodness, that's hilarious. I love it. And
as well as so Atta Malik Juvaini, the author of the History of the World Conqueror, so he's the Shahid Divan, the finance minister. His brother, happens his brother's name. It's also Juvaini, but he's Shahid. No, why can't I remember this right now? What is his brother's name here? I have it somewhere. Shams al-Din.
Oh yeah.
Shams al-Din was the vizier under Hulagu. So there's two Juvainis in this period. One is our author, Atta Malik Juvaini, and the other is Shams al-Din Juvaini, his brother, statesman. Until 1284, the Juvainis made quite a lot of enemies, and Shams al-Din actually both get accused of like embezzlement and working with the Mamluks, and it doesn't end well for Shams al-Din, I'm afraid.
Makes sense. When you've been around in that sort of position of power for that long, you tend to create a lot of enemies, regardless of whether you do the right thing or not. It just kind of happens. Anyway, so on another note, Juvaini is also known for a little bit of infrastructure in the Ilkhanate, such as, I believe, building a bridge in modern-day Azerbaijan and a dam near Sava. He also was known for saving a little bit of Alamut's library when the fortress was being royally sacked by the Mongols. And I believe in the introduction of the History of the World Conqueror, he begins with a lot of praise to God and some praise to Monka. Always nice to praise the overlord of your overlord.
But that's sort of most Islamic works of this period begin with the doxology, sort of thanks to God and the overlord and all that. Praise be to Allah, sort of thing, for allowing you the chance to write this work. So.
And then after that, he makes a little bit of a note that he hopes that his work is on par with, I believe, the records of, I believe it's Khosrow II, who is
The Persian king.
Yes, he is the last great Sassanid Shah before the unfortunate happenings that happened to be the Islamic Caliphate storming all over the Sassanid Empire.
Great tragedy, great tragedy.
Well, great tragedy if you're an assassin. It's not too bad if you're the Islamic Caliphate, of course. And I think somewhere he mentioned, Giovanni mentions that that he's done all these various jobs, and they kind of run in run in his family. And first, he begins his book with putting Chinggis into context. He mentions like the various divisions amongst the Mongolian steppes, and of course the steppe warriors' unfortunate, probably biggest problem, the cycle of pillaging. As I like to call it. It's basically, I come in, I pillage you, I take your stuff, but you're probably still alive because you got away somehow in time, and then you come back, you pillage me, and the cycle repeats itself.
That's just the circle of life. And money. Give me all of your money.
Indeed. And it is also at this time that I believe the Liao dynasty, or rather the Karakitai Khanate, possibly is extracting tribute from them. But I think this might be working on the Liao dynasty, because this is while the Jurchens haven't reached their peak yet.
So, well, yeah, the Lao dynasty controlled quite a bit of Mongolia during their heyday, and they had sort of like garrisons stationed across the country, but these were important sort of trade points and all of that. The Jin dynasty were sort of a bit more not just getting the tribute, but also interfered with the politics, keeping the tribes separated and all, and this and that. Whereas during the Lao, with the garrisons there, it, from what I understand, kind of kept the peace to an extent.
Yeah.
With the fall of the Lao, the removal of that power, so now you're interfering into politics, but not providing that stability that your armies, if they were present locally, would.
Makes sense.
When the Jin invade the Lao dynasty, it collapses suddenly, and Yeludashi, one of the generals of the Lao, so he flees and he takes those garrisons from them. That's what establishes the Karakitai, the Western Lao, with
right
1140, around there. So when in the Karakitai famously defeats Juks at the battle in the Kotvan Steppe in 1143, and then that's the death. No, not the death of the final of Sultan Sanjar, but he loses a huge amount of power, and he ends up being killed a couple years later with an Oghuz Turk invasion. But anyways, so this is kind of the period where the Khwarezm Shahs, then they've been Seljuk vassals, and now they're sort of become vassals of the Karakitai. And after that, start to expand from modern Uzbekistan southwards. So,
yep.
It's all connected.
Indeed. So, and after that, they were mentioning that that the trade throughout the region is also going pretty well, and then I believe Giovanni gets to covering basically Chinggis unites the Mongols, doesn't mention Jamukha very much or at all. And then Chinggis puts in the Yasa, which basically unites all the Mongols together under one law, unlike previous traditions of law in the steppe. And although there are apparently some references here to, I believe, Alexander the Great, and I believe this is still Khosrow II.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, Giovanni's just full of references. It's a bit of a pain to read because every paragraph he throws in references from, or like lines from the Quran, the Shahnama, this and that, and you're reading it, and you'll be reading, wondering, is this supposed to be like something literally happening? Is this a line taken from something? Like, what? Apparently, it reads better in Persian, I've been told.
I sadly do not. I can't read Persian.
Neither can any of us, my good friend.
I can read some Irish, but that's about it.
That's basically 13th century Persian. Juvayni's not even the worst for flowery language in this period.
Yeah.
Vasif is actually an author who seems to have gone out of his way to make his work incredibly indecipherable. Like, he's like, oh, you think that's poetry and fancy prose? Well, check this out. And I've read excerpts of it, and it's just the worst. It'll be like one actual thing he's saying, and then the rest of the paragraph is just like quotes from things and like puns and wordplay and all this stuff, and just playing it up, and purple prose at its worst. Terrible fan fiction. Terrible fan fiction that's also doubling as poetry. So,
God, I remember that.
And people criticize Marco Polo over far less.
yeah, just.
And that came from our theory of fan fiction.
So you read Marco Polo and then you read William of Rubruck or John de Plano Carpini, and like, why the hell? How did Marco Polo become so famous? This is crap. Compared in writing style, at least. Well, it went through so many transitions. Right off the bat, you had a guy trying to be clever, but wasn't actually all that clever. With Rustichelli, the ghostwriter.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Rustichelli, the ghostwriter. Yeah, I remember him very fondly. And here they also mentioned that Chinggis had, of course, as always, divine support, will of God. That's always something that rulers just conveniently have whatever the heck they want, right?
the mandate of heaven.
Blue heaven, too. And as far as I know, the Juvayni documents that the Yasa is, of course, written in the Uyghur script, as that's what the Mongols have for writing, and he apparently finds it surprisingly consistent with Sharia law, which, of course, Juvayni would know
it's
also.
Not at all.
Or that's at least a claim he makes, because he believes that he would know that as an authority on Sharia law.
It's for those of you unfamiliar with both Sharia and the Yasa. So one of the promulgations of the Yasa is that animals have to be slaughtered in the Mongolian method.
Right.
So usually knocked unconscious, and chest is cut open, and the heart is crushed, aorta is crushed or made a cut. The whole idea is that you are not spilling blood, or spilling as little as possible, because if the blood ends up on the earth, that's offending the earth. Also, that blood can be used for cooking, eating. It's foolish to waste that good material on the steppe. Meanwhile, Sharia, for an animal to be kosher or halal, the blood animal has to be hung up, throat cut, and the blood drained. You will notice these are two very different methods of
yeah, I can totally see that.
And there's other things too. In the Yasa, you can't wash dirty things in running water. You'll offend the spirits within the water.
Right.
Islam, Sharia, we're not in Sharia, but in Islam, there's important hygiene considerations and things about cleanliness and how often you should wash. There's
all sorts of stuff.
a lot of things like that, which when people talk about Mongol religious tolerance, they think of it from the modern point of view of oh, tolerance, everyone's equal, versus what it is in the 13th century is rather literally tolerated. Like,
yeah.
As long as you're not,
As long as you offer obedience to the Han, we don't kill you.
Don't, there's a lot of debate over whether the Yasa was supposed to be implemented on sedentary peoples, or if it was, to what extent. And it seems like as long as you weren't doing these things in public, like in the middle of a public square, slaughtering animals in this fashion, all right, the Mongols would probably leave you, because there weren't enough Mongols to
enforce the law, right?
Enforce this every nook and cranny and valley of Eurasia, but there certainly were cases where it was enforced, and I think it's Truveni, and I think he says at one point that Chagatai, so Genghis' second son, sort of gets this awful reputation as the strictest enforcer of the Yasa, and I think he says under Chagatai that every Muslim in Transoxania had to just eat carrion and roadkill for like 10 years because the Yasa was so strictly enforced, which is, first of all, unlikely, but it's kind of more of a hyperbole, that exaggeration. You get the point. Things were tough. Chagatai was a dick,
but also notice that's a different lineage of Genghis heirs. So Truveni can afford to be absolutely crass as he wants about Chagatai, so long as he doesn't criticize the line that comes from Tolui. Exactly. So there you go.
And he's also big on contrasting Chagatai and his hatred of Muslims with Urgadai, who's sort of now portrayed as sort of this generous, great favor to Islam, and there's a lot of anecdotes of, oh, here's Chagatai trying to get this Muslim killed. Oh, here's Urgadai intervening and rescuing the Muslim. And now he's giving him armfuls of gold and letting him off with herds of animals and this and that. And whether they're actual things that happened or just, the kind of fun anecdotes that pop, like George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. And, Father, I can't tell a lie. That kind of... Because I think one of these anecdotes literally starts off with, well, one day Urgadai and Chagatai were like walking beside this river somewhere in Turkestan.
Oh yeah, I remember this one.
Yeah, and they find a Muslim. He's washing himself in the river. Chagatai gets angry.
Oh no!
And Urgadai pulls him aside before he goes on trial and says, "Actually, you were looking for a coin you dropped in the river," and then gives the guy like just armfuls of money. But like, it's their kind of stories. Like, wow, that's really nice. Almost certainly didn't happen because it's such kind of a fairy tale quality.
Yeah, like the thing with it, like the Genghis heirs, as far as I know through history, didn't get along all that well, and it just really makes you think. Yeah, that kind of story, it's probably not there. So.
Yeah, it feels like such wishful thinking, that, our local ruler or representative of the Khan, Chagatai, he's awful, but, the guy in charge, he's good, so support the Mongols, guys.
Just eliminate the bad little boss, keep the good big boss on top as usual.
It's kind of like in the States, everyone hates the senators, but their senator, he's the good senator. Right? Or congressman.
Yeah,
it's ad nauseum with politicians you don't like.
Yeah, it's one of the unfortunate happenings down here in the States that all of us Americans absolutely loathe Congress, but yet we re-elect the same guys every year because we think our guys are the stand-up people. I've actually gone through the voting records of my own senators and representatives, and I'm just going to say this. If this were the French Revolution, I'd already be carrying them to the guillotine. I'm not going to say any specific names, but because we need to remain on topic, but good comedy.
That's a whole other... Back to Juveni.
Indeed, agreed. So, I believe here, Juveni, of course, praises the whole quote-unquote religious tolerance that the Mongols have of, as long as you say yes to the Han, we won't kill you because of your religion. Keep in mind, we'll only kill you if you say no to the Han.
We're not killing you because of your religion, killing you because you followed an aspect of your religion we don't like.
Bingo!
That's Mongol religious tolerance.
Yeah.
There.
And I believe Juveni also mentions the whole merit-based promotion. This sort of, in the Mongol Empire, you can pull people from all sorts of walks of life and make them amazing. Like, of course, my favorite story on this is, of course, Jeeb. Just a random low-caste Mongol who happened to shoot Genghis off a horse in battle. 5 seconds later, he's a general and in charge of a giant army of angry, crazy Mongols. Weird, Genghis. But, hey, at least you know where to figure out the good ones.
Hey, but Genghis had the plenty of skills. He was an eye for talent.
Indeed.
A fantastic organizer.
That too. And here, I believe Juveni mentions that the Mongols also practice war by hunting, which of course makes sense because, of course, their primary weapon on the hunt and on the campaign run is, of course, the bow. And here he mentions a lot more about, specifically, I believe, the Great Hunt, which is done by the Hans themselves, and this often goes for multiple months, which I can imagine is probably not all that good if you're an environmentalist, because several months of just straight up killing animal after animal. Of course, little blood is spilled, but, still, that's a lot of dead animals.
I think there was punishment if the soldiers, if they let an animal through, they were supposed to be hit with a cane 10 times or something.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing could get out.
Yeah.
Sort of a big circle, and then the guys would just come in there with their swords on horseback and just swinging around and chop up animals. It would be a sight to see.
My goodness, sounds like the decimation punishment over in the Roman legions, almost.
Well, if one man abandoned his Arban, the whole Arban was supposed to be killed.
Right.
Or punished. So it's that group punishment, because you're not just failing the Khan, you're failing your comrades, your family, quote unquote. So
it kind of makes you think of I listen to a lot of atheist YouTubers who describe cult punishment tactics, and this sort of group punishment or shunning, this sort of thing, it kind of feels a little bit similar.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a bait. You feel you might not like the guys at the top, but if these are in your Arban, these are the guys you're working with every day.
Yeah, your squad
in arms, your family, because the way the Arban was set up, so there's 10 men in an Arban, so all of their families of these 10 men, they're the ones producing the goods, tools, utensils, weapons, armor that the Zarban is using.
Mm-hmm.
So by betraying them, you're not just betraying these 10 men, you're betraying these families, or families you've likely gotten to know.
Oh, yeah.
Care about. So it's designed to prevent desertion, and since almost every single author of the period remarks on this aspect, that the Mongols were so loyal, would do whatever their generals commanded, seems to have been very successful.
Yeah, I can certainly see that, yeah. And
results.
Let's justify the means, eh?
Indeed. And here I decided to quickly, and here on my notes, I probably decided to Google some of the terms that Juveni was using here. Specifically, the draft, that is specifically known as kupchur, and then here is another one, avarizat, I believe that means taxes. And then Ikrajuk, that's travel security. Basically, you get your bronze passport and you get to travel throughout the Mongol Empire and trade freely and, of course, not get killed. And then there's, of course, the famous Yam postal system, which is probably also familiar to those who have read Herodotus, because it's basically the same thing that the Persians are using down there.
Sort of the Pony Express, so famous in the States, which operated for like 6 months. But imagine it operated for a century across the whole of Eurasia.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of on and off, and there's a lot of debate over how prolific or how long it actually operated, and if these authors aren't sort of amping it up, or but it did exist. This, and if it's as impressive as we sometimes think it is another matter.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't be surprised if it did break down to some extent, especially after, like, I don't know, the death of Munka or Kublai, because...
Well, that's the whole thing, is during the civil wars, and it's like, well, we're supposed to believe that the Yam system is operating the same time as all these civil wars, because the Yam is very expensive and difficult to operate. The local communities all along the way have to provide for it. And probably what ends up happening is the empire-wide system breaks down, probably with Menka's death, but that there were regional ones, in each Khanate, which kept up.
Oh, yeah, I can totally see that.
So,
yeah.
That seems likely.
And I believe this whole providing for the various riders of the Yam and also for the army is known as Ulag. And here, and as specifically as far as food goes, that is known specifically as Ulufat in the History of the World Conquer. And here, of course, Giovanni goes over the various army unit sizes ranging from Arath all the way down, all the way to Tumen and stuff. And, of course, and Giovanni also mentions, apparently, that there is no need to worry about slaves. And I'm just like, excuse me, I've read a lot of history. I think I'm putting a doubt button here for whatever reason.
It's slavery, but we're not calling it slavery, so we don't have slaves anymore.
Indeed. And of course, as you mentioned, the whole way to prevent desertion is also briefly mentioned here, which is basically if one man deserts, the entire squad goes kaput. Brutal, but efficient.
So Giovanni, you got there. So he discusses the rise of Chinggis, submission of the Uyghurs. He's got the one thing I always found interesting is I just have the table of contents open here. So his chapters, not very long chapters, but he ends up devoting like a surprising amount to stuff outside of the region he actually grows up in.
Oh yeah, he does.
On, so he's, the first 4 or 5 chapters on the rise of the Mongols. There's another 3 chapters here on the Uyghurs. Then Kutschlug, what he's doing in the Tarim Basin there, after he usurped power of the Karagitai.
Yep.
And so that's, let's see here. It's not until chapter 11 in volume 1 that he's actually getting to on the reason for the attack on the countries of the Sultan, of Khorzm.
Right.
So that's, in this translation, that's 77 pages in. So he's spent 77 pages talking about stuff outside of, well outside of what would have been the expected target audience of his readers, you might say.
Yeah.
Definitely come with a lot of, what would the word be? International.
What's that sound?
sound?
It's like something being... Is this your phone that you're recording on? Is it being, like, moved and...
No. Anyway, so back to the story. So we have so we have here with we have Giovanni begin with Genghis's backstory, the usual. He comes out with being proposed at the age of 9, being proposed to Mary Porte at the age of 9, loses his dad. The stuff that I've covered in many episodes of this wonderful podcast. And then after Genghis unites everyone, kills all of his rivals, ranging from Jamukha to Togrul, he then goes into his giant imperial expansion, taking out the Jin and most of the Khwarezm. And, of course, the Xia are completely non-existent, and neither are the Liao. And after that, Genghis dies, and in all his great wisdom, he leaves his empire to his kids.
Of course he does.
Somewhere, somebody wants to make a Holy Roman Empire joke.
I was going to make a Marcus Aurelius joke for the record.
That also works beautifully. It's like, I'm going to force myself and the other guy helped unite the empire with me to retire and hope that the next generation does not fuck everything up. 5 seconds later. Oh, you've got to be kidding me!
Everything is on fire.
And then Constantine pulls the same trick. Are you expecting that to work the second time you tried Constantine? Sorry.
Oh, Constantine. How I glow with you.
Yeah, so... Anyways, the inheritance is sorted out to the kids. Jochi is given a couple of hunting privileges, if I recall right. And
he's sort of... The way a lot of these later works kind of portray him, sort of like his dominion was the hunt, or that after the fall of Urgench in 1220, 1221, that Juchi just went off and spent the last years of his life just hunting, kind of thing. He doesn't get, in these later sources, especially after the rise of the Toluids, Juchi gets usually portrayed pretty poorly.
I kind of find it hard to believe that he spent 6 years just hunting until he died.
Well, and see, some of the earlier sources, so written outside of the Empire or before the rise of the Toluids, is that he spent this time subjugating the Kipchak tribes in the region.
Right.
It was actually like expanding the empire. Of course, after the Toluids, when the Golden Horde is kind of has a lot of power, Batu is so powerful.
Yeah.
Kind of, you make Juchi look worse, kind of thing. And so that's when you get the ones where, like some of these ones, it's Juchi, he was going to start working with Shah Muhammad, but Chagatai found out and had him poisoned, kind of thing.
I kind of find that story specifically very hard to believe, because why would Jochi try to blow up the stuff that his dad's creating? Because he's supposed to be getting it.
That version comes from Juzjani. So he's also a Persian writer, writing same time as Giovanni, but he fled to the Delhi Sultanate in India.
Oh no!
He hates the Mongols. Chinggis Khan is always Chinggis, the accursed one, and Chagatai is just as evil a wretch, but he likes Juchi though.
Right.
So the rumors that get to him is something along the lines of, well, so it's not, first of all, it's not quite clear what kills Juchi. And there's a lot of rumors across a lot of sources that Chinggis had him poisoned, killed, or something like that. So these rumors get to Juzjani, and he just loved hearing every single terrible thing about the Mongols. And he thinks Chinggis is just the worst thing since whatever terrible thing. I didn't have something for that. But so he hears this rumor that Chinggis Khan killed his own son, and of course he believes it because that's just the exact kind of awful thing Chinggis would do. So if he killed Juche, it must have been because Juche was actually a good person who liked Muslims. And he might have... So at the siege of Jurgenj, the Khwarezmian capital, Juche was trying to limit the loss of life.
Right.
Because he was going to get the city, and he wanted to preserve it as a trade site.
Makes sense.
Some people have taken this, interpreted as, oh no, Juche actually, he wasn't so big on the bloodshed, and he was so, a great sense of humanity, hated seeing all these innocents killed.
You do realize he was in the Chinese campaigns, right? He didn't stop Chinggis from slaughtering Beijing.
In Jujani, that becomes, Juche was, he thought Muslims were great, he wanted to protect them, he wanted to work with Shah Muhammad and help him defeat Chinggis, but Chagatai and Chinggis found out and killed them.
Yeah.
And I think that's why in some modern retellings, modern books and stuff, like Connor Golden's Conqueror series, Juche sort of becomes this less sanguine figure compared to the others and gets kind of romantic. I think first everyone always feels bad for Juche because he's the bastard and Chagatai picks on him and stuff. And
he also dies first, so it's very easy to embellish upon him as much as you want.
Exactly. So he gets all of these things, because people want to make the personality out of everyone. Period, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Chagatai is angry and he's stern and enforces the Yasa. Ergadai is drunk and becomes Khan, but he's friendly and chummy. Tolui is bloodthirsty and all this.
Also a drunkard.
And so Juche, probably also drunk, probably didn't have a problem with bloodshed, but because there's this mystery over his death, seems to have resisted, had some sort of tension with his father, all this uncertainty around his paternity turns into this. Yeah. So.
He kind of becomes a little bit romanticized indeed.
Exactly.
And anyway, so Chagatai is made the stern judge. Ogadai as kind of Ogadai is kind of given the overall leadership as the Great Han. And Tolui apparently gets to help manage the army, which of course won't last too long because of his massive drinking problem. And then they have Chinggis, and apparently as this is going on, they have one of those they have one of those famous stories of the steppe where they have a break one arrow and break one arrow very easily, and then you have a bundle of arrows that's practically impossible to break. And I believe here, Juvayni also mentions quite a bit of infighting in the Mongol Empire because, of course, after Chinggis' death, it takes all about 5 seconds for the kids to figure out the inheritance and then figure out that one of them should have all the inheritance, and that kid should be them, of course.
Because that's just what happens.
Agreed, J-Buck. And right here, of course, Juvayni mentions that the Empire's territory specifically gets split up into 4 Khanates. Specifically, of course, as we know, the Golden Horde for Jochi, the Chagatai Khanate for Chagatai, the Khanate, the Great Han for Ogadai, and I believe the home steps for Tolui.
So not really a Khanate, but it's Ulus. So
right.
It's division within the empire, sort of administrative division for the princes. The way the Mongols saw the empire, it was that the empire itself was the patrimony of all the descendants of Chinggis.
Ah.
So the princes all got their own sort of Uluses. their sort of territory they got to, play in kind of thing. But there'd also be when they're contributing their own troops to the other campaigns. So they'd be like, oh, we're invading China, so we're going to split aside these cities in this region. So the Juchids get that. These cities here, the Chagatayids get that. These cities here will load properties of the Great Khan. And so when these cities are setting off their tribute, they're going off to the Juchids, to the Chagatayids. And this actually survives till quite late. Like, we have as early as, like, the 1300s, when there's, like, organizing peace between the Golden Horde and the Ilkhanites and Chagatayids and Urgadiyids and the Yuan dynasty. Part of this is opening up those routes so that, now the Juches can get the trade that's owed for them from their properties in China.
Right, makes sense. And here, Guyuk, the future successor of Ogadai, is also mentioned. He gets his own brand of inheritance, which is specifically known as Emil to Draveni, but of course, Google search to see where exactly we're going here. And basically, this is going to be known in the future as Jungar land near modern-day Kazakhstan.
Oh, Jungaria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we covered the Jungars quite extensively, I believe, on our last, 2 collaborations ago. That was fun.
He also, it's kind of interesting when he talks about Torgena Khotun.
Oh, yes.
Fatima Ogulkamish. So he's talking about the regencies of female rulers in the Mongol Empire.
Very rare mention.
It's an interesting thing because there's a stereotype that, there's these Muslim writers who, they're not going to like a female ruler sort of thing.
Yeah.
And basically that's true in this case. He doesn't really like Torgena, Fatima Ogulgamish. But I don't think that's because he's a Muslim, but it's because in the Toluid period, all of them were sort of demonized. Like Torgena, she sort of gets the better treatment because she was the widow of Urgadai, and they all sort of go, yeah, she was nasty, but she was smart. She was smart, real smart, trying to get her son in power. Ogulkamish, it seems Merka especially hated her. Like,
makes sense.
That shows up in William of Rupert in his account. I don't know if you've read it, but
not yet.
He interviews Merk personally at one point, and I believe in that account, Merka basically just calls her just like a dumb bitch kind of thing. Like he's just like, it's crass. Sorry for those of you with virgin ears here. Who don't like swear words, but we're fine with us talking about massacres and destruction of cities. But anyways, Merka, the first of the Toluids to rule, just hated Ogulkamish. And that's what I think. So when she's getting this poor depiction in Juveni's account, he's not disliking her because he's a Muslim, he's disliking her because that's what his bosses, basically, or his patrons are telling him to... Patrons are telling him to do.
I think that's a shameless plug for you to get more patrons.
It's sort of, subliminal, subconscious. I have to update my Patreon more than once a month.
I know, same. I haven't got anything yet.
How am I going to do multiple Patreon posts? But anyways, yeah. And one more point on Torgena and Fatima is there is some modern authors have sometimes sort of speculated that Torgena and Fatima were lesbians, actually. It's an interesting kind of subtext there, but I think if they were, that
would have been used against them.
Yeah, that they would have said that as like a way to denigrate them, sort of thing. Oh, they're awful. Also, they're lesbians.
Yep.
Oh, come on.